Google Doc just added a new feature on their particular site where you'll be able to add a couple of interesting things that you might actually need to address when it comes to presenting or showing off your problem solving skills, most especially in STEM areas of studies. Like for example, thinking about how we're going to be able to put a couple of set symbols together. Another thing is this: how am I going to put a couple of operation symbols together? Another thing to think about is this: how should I put arrows to connect reactants and products? Actually, the other way around. But it's quite fascinating to see how this tool can be taken advantage of when you go on Google Doc. And to do that, all we have to do is go on Google Doc, open that particular site or space, and once you have this particular space revealed on your screen, there are a couple of two things to be aware of. Two things involving how you should open this particular feature. And to address that, these two ways include the following. First is either you go to insert and you scroll down to equations. If you can't actually see that or activate it yet, all you do is just click on any space on your template, and once you go on insert and you scroll down to equations, this is one way to activate or bring that onto your tab section. Another way to address this also is if you're like, oh man, I need this particular method to be a little bit straightforward and to be incorporated right away, all you have to do is go to view and you scroll down to show equation toolbar, and once you click on that, it is accessible. Now it's quite fascinating to see that yes, it's kind of accessible, and yes, of course, we have these actually reviewed right here already, so you don't need to activate it again by clicking on new equations. However, in this case here, once you have these popped up, you'll be able to have this particular space ready for you to play around with whatever equations or operations, or in this case letters, that you want to place on your screen. So for reactivation, what you can do is, for example, when you're done typing a specific equation or operation here and you want to move on to the next part, what you see is that this here is deactivated and this here is activated. Now to activate this, all you need to do is click on new equations and you will be able to gain access to all the features here. So that is how you'll be able to now have a new square or box. Now I'm going to show you the specific categories that are shown here. In here we have 5 categories, and the first one here, this deals with access to Greek letters, and once you click down the arrow, you have at the top here which are for small letter Greeks, and while these here are capital Greek letters. So in this case here, usually in scientific or mathematical expressions, mathematics mainly, we have, for example, we have pi, which is 3.14, so many more letters, numbers, but also we have in here angle, which is represented as theta, and these in terms of other forms of derivatives, we have this to be partial derivative, we have which is also known as delta, but you can also use delta in terms of the variant. By the way, we have variant here, for variant, beta variant, but we can also use this for protein. Yes, lambda, which is used for wavelength symbol, and many more things to be aware of when it comes to use of Greek letters. Now the next one here involves miscellaneous operations, and these here focuses on not only the use of operations like multiplication, you have division, but this can also be used for sets like Cartesian products, and this here, which is dot here, represents product as well. We have plus or minus symbol. This can also be used for multiplication. Sometimes it can be used in multiplication when you are dealing with exponents, like scientific notations, let's put it that way. Another one here to be aware of is in terms of the use of this x with a circle around it. This is usually used in terms of vectors, and when you want to throw something away from you, then it means that the arrow tail is something that is used to describe it on paper, while if you throw something towards you or out of the page, then you use the arrow head. And so those are the two things to be aware of when it comes to those symbols. Other things like, for example, when you're dealing with sets, we have union between one set and the other set. We have this here to be intersection between two sets. You also have other interesting symbols like this here, which is infinity, and this here you can use it when you're explaining two lines when it comes to, hey, these lines are perpendicular to each other. And this triangle here can be used to describe the shape of a specific object on paper when you have just three letters that are capital letter, of course, and side to side each other. So you can just say triangle ABC and so on. So those are the interesting things to be aware of when it comes to the use of miscellaneous operations, which is right here. Next is focusing on more details about relationships and also sets. Like, for example, if you have something that is less than or equal to something, this is an symbol for you. Something greater than or equal to something, this is the symbol that you can use for sure. If something is so less than, it's like emphasizing how low that number is, or this here, how great that number is compared to another number. That is something to be aware of. This here is when something is almost equal to or approximately equal to a particular number. So that is something to keep in mind. However, when it comes to this, it's not equal to another number at all. And so those are the things to think of. This here kind of means mainly containment of sets. So when something is contained in another thing, that means that yes, that is relationship to be aware of. While this here involves when a particular particle is in a set. So this here is called X is an element of A. An example. However, this here means that a particular particle is not an element of a set. So that's the other opposite of that. So those are the things to keep in mind when it comes to this particular segment. Now, the next one here involves various operations that you're familiar with. For example, you have division, you have square root. If you want to have different roots that is other than squares, you go for that. This here sometimes is used mainly in chemistry when you're showing the chemical symbol of a particular element. Then you have the one at the bottom, which is in this case the atomic number, and the one at the top is the mass number. This here is mainly involve powers and other things here. Like, for example, you're dealing with one particular scale from what end to what end. So from A to B, what is happening? And so those are the things to be aware of in terms of something above versus something below. And it's not only applied to this here, but also applied to this and also this ones right here. Now this here is limit in terms of where something is going from what particular region to what particular region. Like, for example, if an angle is approaching a particular number, then it means that limit where an angle is approaching a specific number, what is happening. So those are the things to keep in mind for this particular segment here, which is called what? Math operations. And finally here, this is where some people are kind of like excited about when it comes to typing up equations in terms of chemistry. And so you have like one directed to the left and one directed to the right. Usually it's like equilibrium, but this here is more of resonance in chemistry, and this here is when something is going downward up in terms of vectors, and this here is where you're going both up and down at the same time. And all these stuff are things to be aware of in terms of what are the specific symbols and letters and also potential operations that you should use when you are on Google Docs. As we see here, there are 3 examples that we're going to check out. Now, out of these 3, 2 I'm going to do, and I'm going to challenge you to do the last one on your own. And so let's begin with the following. The first one here kind of shows your relationship, which is similar to what we know from absolute values in mathematics. And so how are you going to be able to transform this into Google Doc equation form? And in order for you to do that, there are two things that we're going to be playing around with. One here is first on the new equation, we're going to play around with math operations, and we're going to play around with relations. And so these two are the things that we're going to look at, and we're going to take advantage of this as we build this particular written form case number one. So let's begin with the following. So first is I need an absolute value. When I look here, I see this particular symbol. Once I click on it, it gives me this particular instruction where I type my A, and then I move my arrow to the right, and then I type my equal sign. And in here we don't need to find equal sign because it's not here, it's on our keyboard already, so we don't need to search for it over here. So now once you type your equal sign, the next step is to type the first instruction. Now the first instruction here says that A, if A is way greater than or equal to 0. So in this case we're going to start off with the same setup, which is we're going to go back here. We see this brackets which has the sharp edges at the middle, and so once we click on that, we type A if A is greater than or equal to 0. So greater than or equal to 0, we're going to look for it, which is here, and once you click on this, and then you type your 0, and that is 1. Now the other one here is quite challenging to type this other one, so what I suggest you do is click on this to finish this part of your equation, type enter, and then use this particular part to drag it to the next part. So that is my approach to this particular step. And so once you do that, you repeat the previous step, and this is how we're able to approach this particular step. In this part is quite challenging, except you hit space and you are able to line it up in such a way that it agrees with what you have already. So this is our first case scenario, and we're able to successfully transform it from written form to Google Doc equation form. Sorry for the background noise. And then the final one here we're going to do is a chemical equation, and this reaction here shows you that hydrogen gas and water gas, they actually combine together to form water, and this shows the enthalpy, which is in this case the amount of energy that is going to be released, which is an exothermic reaction process, and we are going to transform this here written form to a Google Docs equation form. And now for me to do that, we do the same step, but we're going to need 3 instructions or 3 characters. One involves the following. We need not only the math operations, but also we need arrows and we need Greek letters. So those are the things we need in order for we to be successful at this. And first is we type our 2, and then we have a H letter, and we need, remember that if you type a H, it's quite challenging to pull that off. So what we do instead is that we need to pull off the subscript, and now for you to accomplish that, and so what you do is you go to this particular math operation, and once you go there, you click on X subscript A, and once you have this, please remember that we need to type H first and then move your arrow to the right in order for you to gain access to the subscript, and then you put your 2 right there. And so once you're done, move your arrow again to the right in order for you to continue the operation step, and you add your plus sign, which is on your keyboard, to your keyboard. Then you're going to move on to the next part, which is oxygen, in this case 2. And so we do the same thing here. We go here, click on X, by that way we have access to our O, move your arrow to the right down, gain access to the subscript, and then you put your 2, and then move your arrow to the right again, and then you have that taken care of for the reactant side. And for the product side, before we go into that, we need our arrow, and to pull that off, we go to the arrow section, click on this right here, we have our arrow that is shown right here, and then we move on to typing the balanced equation, and we are going to type our H, hydrogen, and we are going to put this here, H, arrow down, 2, and arrow up, and we'll put a final letter, which is O. And once you have that, we are able to type our balanced equation. And once you have this, the next part now is to type the energy, enthalpy. And to do that, all we do is go to our Greek letters to accomplish this particular symbol here. And once you have that, we have this, and once you click on this, we have that revealed right over here. And then we type our H, and once you have this, equal to negative 484 kilojoules per mole. And so this is it. We are able to successfully type our chemical equation and its energy in this particular second case scenario. So I hope you found this really informative in terms of these examples and also overview on how to use new equations. I encourage you to practice, and by that way you'll be proficient in using this. However, there's some things that are missing here, like logarithm, another one that is kind of that should be added, and many more things here. It's not to the level, unfortunately, as that of the competition, which in this case is Microsoft. So I'm hoping that in the future this will be really detailed and well, appealing and easy to use, and well integrated as well, not now but also in the future. So I hope you found this really informative. Please hit the comment down below, let me hear your thoughts about this, but that way I can talk to you soon. Stay smart as always and believe in yourselves.